The morning the production line died, Nora Fallon was already 3 hours behind schedule and blaming everyone but herself. At 6:52 a.m., the primary CNC system at Fallon Industrial's second facility froze. Mid-cycle, a cascade fault spreading through the control board like a crack through ice. By 8:20, when her CFO, Derek Shaw, called to deliver the news, Nora had already dismissed 2 national maintenance contractors, both quoting 72-hour response times, and was scrolling past a third. She didn't ask how bad. She asked, "Who can fix it by noon?" Derek, sweating through his collar, remembered a name from plant manager Walt Garber, a man who ran a small repair shop on the edge of an industrial block. Callaway Repair and Machining, the owner, someone Walt swore, had once diagnosed a cascade fault in under 4 minutes, a problem a certified team had spent 2 days misidentifying. Nora laughed when she heard the name, not loud. A soft, polished laugh meant to be heard by the people standing closest. Her driver heard it. Her assistant, Lila Vance, heard it. Lila looked away because that was the appropriate response when their CEO found something beneath her. What Nora didn't know, what she had no interest in knowing, was that the man inside that shop, wiping his hands on a grease-darkened cloth behind a steel workbench, held 7 patents. 3 of them ran on her production lines every single day. His name was Samuel Callaway, and the quiet of his shop was not the quiet of small ambitions. It was the quiet of a man who had already decided what he was going to do. Samuel was 39, a former lead systems engineer at Vantex Engineering Group, and a widower raising a 6-year-old daughter, Chloe. He had left Vantex not because the work dried up, but because his wife's death had left him the only parent. He did not advertise his past. He did not correct people who assumed he was just a repairman. He fixed what others couldn't, charged fairly, and went home. The call from Derek Shaw lasted 4 minutes. Samuel asked 3 questions: control board generation, overnight ambient temperature, fault code sequence, then said he would come. He did not ask about the fee. He packed his secondary kit, left Chloe's stuffed rabbit, Barnaby on the workbench, and drove his old pickup to Fallon's facility. He arrived at 9:40 a.m. Nora was standing in the parking lot with Derek and 2 operations managers, her charcoal coat crisp, her phone in one hand. She assessed the arriving truck, the way she assessed a late shipment, as an inconvenience, wearing the wrong clothes. Samuel stepped out in work pants, a gray flannel shirt, and older boots. He nodded toward the group. No one nodded back. Inside, Walt Garber led him to the frozen line. Samuel worked through the control cabinet systematically, unhurried, speaking only once, to ask for a specific diagnostic cable. He did not consult documentation. At 11:47 a.m., the line restarted. The fault had been a secondary ground loop masking a corrupted initialization sequence, a problem the original equipment manufacturer would have taken 2 more days to find. Walt stood back and watched the first components move through. He'd seen a lot go wrong in this building, not nearly enough go right. Samuel packed his tools and walked back to the main corridor. Nora was waiting, already on her phone. When she ended the call, she said, with the brisk efficiency of someone settling an invoice, "How much?" Samuel gave her a fair number. Nora didn't look up. She told Derek to process it. Derek, relieved, said to the room that it was a good thing they'd found someone. And wasn't it convenient that the small shop rate was easier on the quarterly budget than the contract firms? One manager smiled. Another looked at the floor. Derek said small operation twice more, each time with a slight inflection that made it something other than a neutral description. Lila, standing behind Nora, looked at the far wall with a careful blankness, embarrassed, but without the standing to interrupt. Nora didn't stop him. She scrolled her phone, then glanced up and said, "Thank you for coming on short notice. If we have smaller issues in the future, we'll be in touch." The word smaller landed in the room like a dropped bolt. Samuel looked at her directly for the first time. No offense, no anger, no plea. He looked at her the way a person looks at a system they are studying, noting its properties without judgment. Then he said, "No problem," and walked out. Walt caught him near the exit, shook his hand with both of his own, and said quietly, "That control system you just repaired was originally designed by a Vantex team about 9 years back. I was there when it was installed, never seen anyone outside the original team work on it without documentation. Don't know if you knew it from somewhere, but thank you." Samuel thanked him without elaborating. He walked to his truck, sat behind the wheel for a long moment, then reached into the center console and pulled out a manila folder he hadn't opened in 2 years. Inside, a consulting report he'd written during his Vantex years, a rehabilitation study of a shuttered Fallon facility called the Ridgemont plant. He'd concluded that 70% of its equipment was recoverable and that its production capacity, if upgraded, would outperform either of Nora's active plants at lower per-unit cost. Fallon had closed it instead. The report went into a drawer. Samuel looked at the cover page, then put the folder back. He started the truck and drove to pick up Chloe. That evening, his friend Adrian came over with a six-pack. After Chloe was asleep, Samuel laid out the day, the repair, the comments, the words smaller. Adrian listened, then asked, "What are you thinking about?" Samuel said, "The Ridgemont facility." Adrian set down his bottle. "The one they shuttered? It's been for sale for 9 months. No takers. They think it's a money pit." Samuel paused. "They're wrong. The Ridgemont facility had been locked for 14 months. Samuel Callaway walked through its loading bay on a Thursday afternoon in light rain, the chains and padlocks hanging open beside him. Inside, the air smelled of cold grease and stalled time. Dust covered the control panels. Rubber hoses had stiffened. But the bones, the massive presses, the conveyor infrastructure, the original ductwork were still there. He moved through each section for 4 hours, checking motor housings, testing manual overrides, reading the building like a language he had spoken fluently for 11 years at Vantex. By the time he walked back out, he had revised his 18-month restart estimate down to 15. The acquisition closed on a quiet Friday. No press release. The buying entity was Callaway Industrial LLC, registered 3 weeks earlier with Adrian Cole as co-owner and Samuel as managing director. The price? Lower than Samuel had expected. Not dramatically, but low enough that the number felt like a door being held open. Derek Shaw, Nora Fallon's CFO, signed the transfer documents during a 30-minute meeting he spent largely checking his phone. He did not run a background check on the buyer. He did not search the name Callaway. He saw a small LLC and a fair offer and moved on. 6 former Ridgemont employees got calls that same week. Samuel reached them through Walt Garber's network and former Vantex contacts. He did not post job listings. He called each person directly, explained the project plainly, and offered a fair wage. What drew them in was not the money. It was the chance to work on something being built from the ground up by someone who knew exactly what he was building and why. The first morning of interior work, those 6 people walked back through a door that had been closed on them. Same work boots, same tool bags. No bitterness, just the specific determination of workers who understood the value of what they were being given. Samuel didn't give a speech. He showed them the equipment layout, answered their questions directly, and then they began. While Samuel built, Fallon Industrial started to crack. The defense subcontract that had been expected to renew did not renew. A second client reduced its order volume without explanation. Nora received these signals through Derek's reporting, which framed each setback as an isolated market fluctuation. What Derek didn't tell her, what he had stopped tracking, was that quality issues had been accumulating across Fallon's active facilities for nearly 2 years. Deferred maintenance, staffing reductions, the predictable harvest of short-term margin decisions. Lila Vance, Nora's assistant, noticed first. She had been in the room the day Samuel repaired the production line. She had seen the way Derek talked down to him, the way Nora had said smaller issues. She had felt embarrassed but said nothing. Now, processing paperwork from the Ridgemont sale, she saw the name Callaway Industrial LLC cross her desk. It meant nothing to her at first. She logged it and moved on. Then she saw the trade publication, a single paragraph. A new precision components manufacturer based in the old Ridgemont facility. The annual value of their first major contract, with a Japanese automotive supplier, was larger than Fallon Industrial's total revenue from the previous quarter. Lila searched the public filing. She found Samuel Callaway's name as managing director. She searched again, adding the word Vantex, 7 patents, 11 years of systems engineering. A consulting report he had written on Ridgemont 5 years earlier, concluding that 70% of the equipment was recoverable, that had been submitted, received, and ignored. She printed everything, placed it in a folder, waited for the right moment. That moment came on a Thursday evening when Nora was working late. Lila set the folder on the conference table beside Nora's water glass. Nora opened it, read the first page slowly, then the patent list, then the photograph, a Vantex headshot from 6 years ago, showing Samuel Callaway in a dark jacket, looking directly at the camera with the composed, unguarded expression of someone who had nothing to perform. Nora recognized the face, the man with the worn tool bag, the man whose work had restarted a line she had been told could not be restarted, the man she had thanked for handling a small matter. She closed the folder, held very still. "How long ago did the Ridgemont sale close?" she asked. Lila told her. 14 months. Nora did not say anything more that evening. The audit she ordered the next morning was framed to the board as a routine operational review. The trail was not clean. Derek had accepted a property valuation without an independent assessment. The due diligence file was sparse. The buyer background check field was blank. Derek submitted his resignation 4 days before the findings were formally presented. Nora sat alone in the conference room after the last board member filed out. The window faced east, toward Ridgemont, though the building itself was not visible from this distance. She pulled the folder from her briefcase again. She had read it 3 times. Not because she was learning new information, but because she was doing something harder, revising the story she had told herself about the man whose shop she had laughed at. She found Samuel's phone number through his attorney. 1 call. He answered on the 2nd ring. She said her name. There was a pause, not awkward, only genuine. The pause of a person deciding how to respond, not whether. He said, "Hello?" She said she would like to meet. Discuss a potential supply arrangement. He said he was available Tuesday morning. She asked where would work for him. He said, "The shop on Callaway." The morning Nora Fallon walked into Samuel Callaway's shop, she came alone. No driver, no assistant, no phone pressed to her ear. She had not been inside before, only stood at the entrance that first day, laughing softly at the rusted sign. Now she ducked through the same door and stopped. Inside was not what she had imagined. Every tool hung in its place on a pegboard wall, outlined in faint marker so nothing would ever be returned to the wrong hook. The workbenches were clear except for the active job. The floor was swept. On the corner of the main bench sat a small stuffed rabbit with button eyes, one ear slightly more worn than the other. Behind it, a framed photograph, a group of engineers in front of a completed production facility. Samuel, younger by a decade, standing second from the left. Nora looked at the rabbit for a moment, then looked away. Something about the room, its material honesty, its complete lack of performance, made the language she normally relied on feel poorly fitted to the occasion. Samuel came through the back door with 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of her without asking whether she wanted it and sat on the stool across the bench. She wrapped her hands around the mug and said what she had come to say first, that she had reviewed his background, that she understood now who she had been working with, that she wanted to discuss a long-term supply agreement for precision components. Samuel listened to the full shape of her proposal. Then he said he appreciated her directness. Then he said one other thing. Not sharply. Not as an accusation. As a plain statement. Do you remember that afternoon at Facility 2? Nora held his gaze. He said he didn't need anything from her about it. He said what happened that day was what it was, and he hadn't lost sleep over it. But he wanted her to understand that the shop was real, and the work was real, and he had never been ashamed of either. She did not offer the easy apology that would have ended the moment quickly. She said, "I understand that now." It was not the same thing as an apology, and they both knew it. But it was something more specific, an honest acknowledgement made directly to the person it was owed to. She pushed a folder across the bench. He looked at the cover, did not open it. "Take whatever time you need to review the terms," she said. He said he would. She stood to go, picking up her coat from the second stool. At the door, she turned and looked at the sign above the entrance, the hand-lettered name that had rusted at the corners, the one she had laughed at in a voice meant to be heard. She did not laugh now. She read it as information, plain and accurate, the name of the man and the place where he worked. Neither more nor less than that. That evening, Adrian stopped by the shop. He found Samuel at the bench with the folder open, reading through the supply agreement terms with the deliberate care he brought to any document that carried consequences. Adrian set a coffee on the corner of the bench beside the stuffed rabbit and asked what he was looking at. "Fallon," Samuel said. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, "Are you going to do it?" Samuel said he was thinking about it. Adrian said, 3 months ago, that would have been a strange thing for you to say." Samuel turned the page. 3 months ago, I wasn't ready to ask whether she was worth working with. Now I am. That's different. Adrian picked up his coffee and said nothing more. His way of indicating he understood the distinction completely. 3 weeks later, Samuel signed the agreement. Not because he needed the contract. Callaway Industrial had enough to sustain itself and grow on its own terms. He signed it because the terms were fair and the product would be used well, and because, as he told his attorney David Keene when they reviewed the final document together, good work ought to go where it can do the most. David looked at him over his reading glasses. That's an unusual reason for a business decision. Samuel said he had made unusual decisions before. Most of them had worked out. The old shop sign came down on a Saturday morning. Samuel did it himself, up on a ladder with a socket set, unbolting the rusted bracket from the fascia board while Chloe stood below in her jacket, holding the stuffed rabbit and watching. When the old sign was off, she asked what the new one was going to say. Samuel climbed down and stood beside her, looking at the clean rectangle of exposed brick where the old sign had been. "Just Callaway," he said. Chloe thought about that and nodded with the grave consideration that 6-year-olds apply to decisions they have been included in. The new sign went up that afternoon, clean and flat and simple. One word in dark letters, no descriptor, no qualifier. The name had always been enough. It had just taken the world a while to read it correctly. In the kind of city where people move fast and judge by surface, Samuel Callaway's story was never told loudly. No profile photograph, no origin narrative republished on the platforms where such stories are usually performed. The trade publications mentioned Callaway Industrial occasionally when a contract was significant enough to note. The number of people who knew the full arc of what had happened could have fit in the front room of the shop. But in the world where precision and patience and the willingness to work without an audience determine what lasts, Samuel had built something that would still be running long after the names on the Fallon letterhead had changed several times over. He had done it without announcement and without revenge, because those were not the tools he worked with. He had done it the same way he fixed the machine that day, quietly, correctly, completely. And when the work was finished, he turned off the light and went home to his daughter.